So this is how I was introduced to this problem. In April of 2006, I was on the stand testifying in a criminal trial, and a prosecutor comes up and basically starts questioning me about whether or not I had a license and a PI, and I basically said, no, I don't need one. It's computer forensics. I'm not a PI. And so he went down that whole list. But what had just happened, unbeknownst to me, is that a few days earlier, 4 days earlier, in March, that the state of Georgia had basically passed a law making it a felony, and the type of content for the questions he was asking me basically made it sound like you are now committing a felony. But it didn't go into play yet. It didn't go into effect. It didn't go in immediately like it did in Michigan, where I actually have friends who had to shut down their shop the same day. I have friends that already were doing computer forensics, already working on cases, and had to quit. And after 2 months, still haven't clarified whether or not they're going to be a private investigator or whether or not they can continue on the case they were already contracted to do. But in Georgia, they basically put it off until July 1st. So on July 1st, it was going to become a felony. And that was the big deal, is that at that spot in time, the prosecutor was trying to say to the judge, look, we already passed this. It's already going to be a law. It goes into effect on July, so he's not qualified. He doesn't have a license. Let's get him out of here so that he can't testify in our case. Luckily, the judge allowed me to testify, and it wasn't quite a crime at this point, so I was kind of okay at that particular spot. Probably more because the lawyer tried to explain what the law was to the judge. And the judge goes, look here, young man, I'm a judge. I've been on this stand for 20 years. I don't need you to explain the law to me. So, however it worked, it worked. It worked in my favor. So basically, I started doing some research at this point in time. I'm trying to find out, well, I didn't even know anything about this law that he's now talking about. So as soon as I got off the stand, even though I was accepted, I better figure out what in the heck's going on here. So I started doing some research and went through the process, looked up forensics. So now I'll tell you, obviously there's no Magnum CSI or Quincy PI or anything like that, but they did get Rockford Files right. So at least, with computer stuff, we've got some terminology. But computer forensics is a branch of forensics pertaining to legal evidence, and it's using computers and digital storage. And to me, that doesn't sound like anything that PIs were doing. They currently, at least if you thought, oh, well, I need to look at this computer, the first thing you thought was, let's call PI? I don't think so. That wasn't the way it was going. So then I started looking at the content for what was submitted as the bill. This is the actual bill, is HB 1259. And it was passed. It was submitted on February 6th and passed on March 30th. It was never posted anywhere else on any of the PI boards or anything like that or on any of the websites, only on your legislation page. So you have to pay attention to your legislation page, and now obviously you're going to have to start paying attention to anything that's submitted by any of the senators or Republicans for a PI license or anything that affects the current PI license. And they don't have one that they just number them, so you're just not going to know right off the bat, oh, I need to always look for 1259 or something like that. You have to start reading what the laws are that are submitted and what the summary is. And if you see one that says private investigators, you've got to look that up and make sure that it doesn't affect you and that they're not making changes that are a big deal. And sometimes they don't use the word computer forensics or digital at all in the law. They didn't in Georgia. So you have to read it and see if it applies to you by using, a number of different things, or talk to your lawyer. But one thing I want to point out here is that on the morning of the 30th, they basically tried to pass this. It didn't pass. They had a couple of nays, and then all of a sudden, bam! In the afternoon, they got those people to agree. I don't know what they did, but somebody talked to somebody and got somebody to agree we need to pass this law. So somebody got some payoff or something. I don't know. So after researching this, I was already working with a couple of criminal attorneys and stuff like that. So basically, I put this stuff in front of them, and I said, all right, if you were prosecuting somebody for this, what do you think about it? And so, of course, he'd like take my money, so it's okay. But outside of that, he said, I wouldn't want to have to try to prevent you from going to jail for this. There's a high probability that you might go to jail once this actually goes into effect if you continue to practice, because it is a felony, and once you have a felony, you're in trouble anyway. So at least right now, it was a misdemeanor. The same law still applied. All they were doing was changing this one word to felony. And so it was a misdemeanor at that point in time, which they could, I guess, go back and try to get a $500 fine from you or something like that. But the question becomes, in either case, who wants to be first? Who wants to be the first one to go and try that out? And if you really want to know, if you refer to port scanning, How many people know what I mean by that? So, in port scanning, in 2000, I was the first person arrested for port scanning. I was working for a government agency and scanned the ISP that actually supplied service to the government agency, and next thing I know, I was arrested. And so, Theodore has their new MMAP book out. How many bought Theodore's book? No. He sold out really fast, so you know, that's only 2-3 people have it. But page 14 and 15 of his book applies to me. It's all about a portion of my story going through this. So if anybody bought the book and wants me to sign, I'll do it. But what you need to do is go get Theodore's signature too, and convince him to print another 1,000 books or something. It's a great book. So anyway, whoever wants to be first, that's what you got to do. And the other thing is to defend my case for something. Who thinks port scanning is illegal? It's illegal? Illegal? You're okay with it being illegal?
No, I say it's illegal in South Carolina.
Okay. It's illegal in South Carolina. And is it illegal anywhere else anybody knows of?
Florida.
Florida. Port scanning is illegal in Florida. Okay. What's that? You can marry your sister in South Carolina, but port scanning is illegal. Okay. So, just so you know, for me to defend my case for something that I would have never in 2000 declared illegal, it cost me $100,000. So, even though I'm right, I won, it was released, and basically, you know, they declared it wasn't a crime. And if you actually look that up, you'll actually see the judge says port scanning is not illegal. And so they say it's not a crime. So, that's what it's going to cost you if you're going to be first if you get charged with a felony, because you got to go through a number of different things, and you're also going to be like trying to sue like a board, a representative of the state, and that's a big deal too. So I want to show you what the law looked like, basically. Basically, right now, private investigations is a business of obtaining, furnishing evidence, blah, 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 with the relation to background, identity, habits, conduct, business, employment, occupation, assets. I mean, this is pretty much everything. I mean, who has a computer that you don't think that's going to tell something about you? Every time I look at a computer and deal with a case, I can tell a number of different things about somebody just from the way they type or what they look at. So, and if that's not one of those, I don't know what is. So basically, that's what they're declaring.
Going by the last slide,
Yeah.
you could argue that it's also pen testing.
Yes, I believe computer security applies to this a lot, but every time I talk about computer security with regards to this, I get a number of arguments. Because you have a different set that you're dealing with. So for instance, if you work for AT&T and you're doing a pen test in your own company, in a lot of cases you're completely fine and you're legal. But if you're ISS and you're doing a pen test for a third-party company and you discover these things, but the question comes down to, is it going to be used for a legal purpose? That's the ultimate thing. If it's coming down to being used for a legal purpose, you may not know that it's going to be used for a legal purpose when you start. So you may end up having a case. So for instance, somebody comes to you and says, oh, I just want to know what happened on this computer, but it's not going to be going to court. And so you look at it and you go, okay, fine, I see this guy was looking at porn. And then the person who you reported to goes and fires the guy. Now, he may not be wanting to take it to court, but then the guy that got fired now says, oh, well, I don't like how you did this and you treated me wrong. I'm now going to sue you. Now you're going to court. So did you now commit a crime, even though they declared that maybe it wasn't going to go to court? So you got a gray area there you got to deal with, and that's a big problem too. So, because it's not well defined from that standpoint. But yeah, security applies to this a lot. And in Texas, they actually define it. So the securing of evidence in the course of the business to use before a court, board, or officer, blah, blah, blah. So this is the defining point. If you're going to use this for some reason, and of course a board or, you know, an officer or somebody could also be an especially investigating committee inside of a company.